Hello everyone and welcome to Learn MVC step by step in 2 days. 2 days means 16 hours. Yes, you guessed it right, 16 hours. So first thing you would ask me is that, is this some kind of a scam or something? Absolutely not. This is not a scam. It's a real thing. So next thing you would ask me is that, so is it really possible to learn MVC in 16 hours? My answer is yes, absolutely yes, and confidently yes. Okay. So before we start MVC, right, we need to go and arrange our environment. We need to go and ensure that we have the tools with us. So the first thing what we should have with us is the Ultimate Edition. So this complete tutorial, this complete MVC tutorial is in MVC 5, but it holds true for MVC 4 as well. It holds true for MVC 3 as well, or MVC 2 also down the line, right? So first thing is we need to go and get hold of this Ultimate Edition. Here you can see I have the Visual Studio which is installed in my computer. So ensure that the first thing is you need to go online and search for Microsoft Visual Studio 2013 download. So once you go and search Visual Studio Ultimate Edition on Google, right, you should actually go and land onto this page here. You can see I have highlighted the URL. In case you have not landed into that page, you can pause this video and you can copy that URL. You can type that URL out and get to the right page. So now the next thing you would be asking me is that, why are you telling us to download this Ultimate Edition and why not free edition like Express Edition, or must be some kind of a downgraded edition like Professional Edition? This tutorial sincerely, very sincerely aims at making you a true MVC professional. So I don't want to lose some features by downloading Express Edition, right? And second thing, if you are worried about the price, watch on that screen, watch my screen over there. It is clearly written free 90 days trial. So here you have 3 months with you. 90 days is more than enough to learn anything in the world, right? So here you have 90 days before you of Visual Studio. And here I'm promising you that I'm going to teach you MVC in 2 days, right? That is 16 hours. So the remaining whatever, right, 88 days is for you to go and create a project if you wish, right? So why go ahead and why should we download, Express Edition and lose some features? Let's go ahead, learn MVC like a true professional. Let's use Ultimate Edition. Once you have downloaded the Ultimate Edition and you have installed in your computer, you should see something like this on the screen, what you see here. So click on File here, click on New Project and click on this Web menu over here. So once you click on the Web menu here, you can see a template here saying ASP.NET Web Application, and you can also see one more sub-link inside this web here, Visual Studio 2012. So if you click on this, you will see some templates here, and you can see the MVC4 template here as well. So the first question, which would come to your mind is, what exactly is this two links over here? What is this web and what is this 2012? Because if you click on this 2012, you are seeing MVC4. If you're clicking on this web, you're not seeing anything, right? So what are these two links? Now, this tutorial will be using MVC5 for teaching you MVC. But whatever I teach in MVC5 hold true for MVC4 as well as MVC3 and MVC2 as well. Okay. Now, in case you want to do MVC4, then you need to click on Visual Studio 2012 and you need to use this template over here. And in case you want to do MVC5, then you need to click on this web here and you need to actually go and create this project over here. Now, this is a big difference between MVC4 and MVC5. In MVC4, if you see, you have different templates here. For example, you can see this is ASP.NET MVC4, then we have ASP.NET Web Forms and other things. Very quickly, before I move ahead with difference between MVC4 and MVC5, I want to clarify here something regarding ASP.NET, regarding MVC and regarding Web Form. A lot of people think that ASP.NET is different and MVC is different. Absolutely wrong. Okay. First thing, our base framework is .NET, right? From .NET, ASP.NET is created. So again, ASP.NET is a framework for web applications. Okay, from .NET we have various frameworks, like we have a Windows framework, we have a web framework. So this ASP.NET is a web framework. And using ASP.NET, Microsoft has created web forms and it has created MVC. So don't think that MVC is different from ASP.NET. MVC uses ASP.NET internally. So recapping very quickly. So at the base, we have our .NET framework. On that top, ASP.NET is created for web application. And from ASP.NET, we had something called as web forms. Whenever I say old ASP.NET, I mean by ASP.NET web forms. Web forms has a behind code. So if you have ASPX, it will have ASPX.cs, right? So that is our old ASP.NET Web Forms, and this new architecture MVC4 or MVC5, whatever you think, right, is a separate thing. So we have Web Forms and MVC using ASP.NET internally, and ASP.NET uses the .NET framework internally. So now, if logically Web Forms and MVC belongs to ASP.NET framework, then why should we have such kind of separate templates? And that's what they have improved in 2013. In 2013, they created only one template for everything. You can see here, rather than having this templates in a separate manner, if you click on web here, you can see now it is saying ASP.NET Web Application, and from there you can now go and make a choice saying, okay, now I want to create MVC, now I want to create Web Forms, now I want to create Web API, whatever it is, right? So by creating this ASP.NET 1, it will avoid a lot of confusion, where people were thinking that ASP.NET is different and MVC is different, right? So I'm going to go and start from this template over here. If you wish, in case you are into Visual Studio 2012, you can start from here. The steps are almost same, okay? But let me start with MVC 5. So that's a recent version, and it will keep us, up to date as well, right? So let us say this is Hello World. So it's our first program, Hello World, and let's say, okay. Now you can see, as I've said, that it is one ASP.NET framework. All of these guys, Web Forms and MVC, they have emerged from the ASP.NET framework. So you can see now this second template here is telling me, so what do you want to do? Do you want to use Web Forms? Do you want to do coding in MVC? Do you want to do coding in Web API? So from here you can see now you can go and make a choice of what things you want in your project. So at this moment we are learning MVC, so we're going to go and select MVC over here. So you can see MVC is checked over there, that is right. And what we'll do is, because this is our first Hello World program, let's not use any kind of authentication or security mechanism at this moment. We'll talk about these options later on. So what I've done here is I've clicked on this change authentication button here, and I've said no authentication, right? So you can see here I've selected MVC, I've selected this checkbox, and I'm all set. And I'll just say okay over here. So you can see, the new project is created. You can also see the solution of the new project. In case you are not seeing the solution, click on view here and click on Solution Explorer so that you can see the complete solution of your MVC project. So now I am almost done with 5 minutes of the video. I have almost created a solution here, but I have still not talked about what is MVC and why MVC. For now, what we'll do is we'll talk about this why MVC later on. Because if I start speaking about why MVC now, right itself, it will lead to more confusions. Believe me that. Okay. So what we'll do is let's complete 3 or 4 labs. And once you get a hang of MVC, then I will talk about why MVC. But for now, let me talk about what is MVC. MVC stands for Model View Controller. MVC is nothing but it's an architectural pattern where we divide our web application into 3 layers. One is the controller, the other one is the model, and the last one is a view. So in other words, every layer in MVC is assigned a unique responsibility. So the view is for look and feel and positioning. So the view is something the end user will actually see. The model supplies data and business logic. So the models are nothing but they are classes like customer class, your supplier class, etc. And the model can interact with data access layer or some kind of services like WCF service or web service which gives data. And the controller, who is actually the heart of the MVC architecture, he is nothing but he is a coordinator between the model and the view. So what happens is when an end user sends a request or an action, I will say rather. So here when we say request in MVC, we term it as an action. So when an end user actually sends an action to an MVC site, it first hits the controller. And the controller, depending on the action, picks up the appropriate model and binds it with the view, and that result is sent to the end user browser. So for example, if a user sends an action like add customer, now remember actions are normally verbs, like add customer, update customer, go to home or whatever, right? So when an end user actually sends an action like add customer, this add customer action first comes to the controller. The controller then says, okay, let me search, which is the appropriate model for it. So must be the appropriate model is a customer model object. So he creates the object of the customer model object and ties up with a view probably called as customer.aspx, or in case you are using Razor, it can be customer.chhtml. So with this approach, we end up assigning unique responsibility to each layer. So when we make changes in one layer, the other layer is not affected, and this makes the softer project, more maintainable and more better in terms of architecture. So let us map our MVC architecture with the solution which we have just opened. So you can see here we have the controllers folder here. So all your controller code will go inside this folder. You can see we have a models folder here. So all your customer class, your supplier class, or whatever is your domain objects, they will go into this. And then we have the views folder which will have the ASPX or HTML or must be the CSHTML UI, right? So at this moment, don't worry about other folders. I'll come to them as we go ahead in the labs. So at this moment, this is where the controllers will go. This is where the models code will go. And this is where the views code will go. So let us move ahead and let's do lab 1. Now, before we start with lab 1, what we'll do is let's go ahead and delete all these codes, which have been inserted by the MVC template so that we can learn from scratch. So you can see that I've deleted all the codes currently, which is there in the controllers folder. I'm going to go and delete all the folders which are there in my view folder so that we can start from scratch and I can teach you exactly how things work. Okay. So you can see now all the code has been deleted from the controllers folder. I have deleted the models folders did not have any code, and even from the views folder there is no code here as well, right? So everything clean, everything nice. In the views folder there are some files, but leave that files at this moment. They won't affect us while we are doing this first lab. So let us start with lab 1, displaying a simple hello world in MVC. So whenever we start any programming language, as a tradition, people always first go and display hello world, they get warmed up, and then we can go ahead with more complex labs. So what we'll do here is, let's create a very simple controller called as a home controller. Okay. And whenever an end user comes, he will say, okay, go to home. So there will be action in this home controller called as go to home. So he will send the action go to home, and this home controller will go and display a page called as home.aspx, must be home.html or home.cshtml, some kind of a view. So at this moment, we will not create any models. Let's keep it as simple as possible because it is a first lab. Let's not get heavy. So we'll create a simple controller called as home. In that, we'll create an action called as go to home, and then that action will invoke a page called as home.html or home.aspx. So let us first right click on this controller here. So let's start from the start. So I'm going to go and first add a controller here, add a controller. So as soon as we have clicked on this add controller here, you can see he has popped up more templates for the controller. So for example, you can see, here is a controller with read and write actions. So if I take this controller, I will get some ready-made code. Here is a controller which uses entity framework. In case you have not done entity framework, please see our videos of entity framework, where we have explained what exactly is entity framework. But if I use this, then there will be some ready-made code, which will help me to connect to entity framework. So I'll get some ready-made code over here. But remember, when we want to learn something, we should start from scratch. So you saw that how I have deleted everything from the controllers folder, all the ready-made code from the controllers folder, how I deleted all the views from the view folder, right? So what we'll do is let's select the first controller here, the empty controller. In other words, in this controller, in this template, we will not get any code. So we have to write from scratch, right? So let me go and select this and I'll say add. So the next thing now, what it tells us is that basically give the name of the controller. And you can see, if you see this window over here, he has highlighted the controller name, but you can see that he has not highlighted this word controller. Remember that this word controller is a reserved word. Don't even think about deleting this word. If you do that, then you will end up into a mess. So in case you want to name your controller as a home controller, you should just say home and the word controller. In case you want to name the controller as customer controller, you should say customer and the word controller. So what I'll do for now is I'll go and say, okay, this is the home controller. So you can see I have written here the controller name, but I have not deleted the controller word. Don't ever try to do this. If you do this, you are ending up into a mess. Okay. So I'll say add. Now the time you have created this home controller, the first thing which is very noticeable here is you can see that inside the views folder, he has created a home folder. So that means, for this home controller, this is where the views will lie in. Right. So let me go and add a view here. So I'm going to go and add a view here, add a view. So I'll go and add a view. So let me go and name this view as my home page. Okay. And you can see there's a small checkbox here saying use a layout page. So I'll talk about what exactly is this layout page later on. But at this moment, let's go ahead and uncheck this. And let us again go and say empty at this moment, so we can learn from scratch. Okay, I'll say add. So you can see inside the home folder he has added this my homepage.cshtml, which is a razor view. Remember that all the .cshtml views are termed as razor view, and in a razor view the syntax always starts with the @ sign. But at this moment we will not go into razor coding. We will talk about how to use razor later on. So at this moment I'll just say welcome to my first MVC page, okay, or MVC view. So rather than saying page, let's try to use the same terminology what MVC uses, view. So now the first hit will come to this home controller here. So you can see here the first hit will come to the home controller. So on this controller the end user will send an action called as go to home. Okay, remember actions are normally verbs. So I'm going to say here, okay, this home controller will have an action called as go to home, and this action will return a view called as my homepage.cshtml. So remember our view name at this moment is my homepage. Remove the word .cshtml. So I'll say as soon as somebody goes and hits this action here, I will return a view my homepage. Remember, you should not say my homepage.cshtml, you should say without the extension here. Right, great. Now let's do a control F5. Let's see if this thing will run or not. So what will happen now? The end user will come and he will hit this home controller and he will hit with the action go to home, and this go to home will actually go and invoke this my homepage.cshtml view. So you can see now currently our site is running here, and he is saying that I'm not able to find the index page. Why is this error coming? Because you can see here there is an action called as index. So by default, if you don't give anything here, he's trying to hit that index here. Okay, so at this moment he's saying that I'm not able to find the index page, and that is right, we have not created any index page. So we need to go and invoke this action go to home, right, and not the index action. So in order to invoke this go to home, what you have to do is you have to write in this way. You have to say here / controller name. Now remember, you have to say / controller name without the word controller. So you can see here currently my controller name is home controller, so I have to say here only home and not the word controller with it. And then after that I have to say inside this home I want to invoke the action go to home, and let us press enter. So you can see there our application is running. So it is showing here the first page which we have created here, this one, welcome to my first MVC view, right? So remember, you have to type the controller name without the word controller. So if it is a home controller, type here home. If it is customer controller, type the word customer, and inside that controller type the action like go to home. So if you press, you should be able to see the view. So this was our first lab of MVC, displaying a simple hello page using MVC5. Now I would like to point to a couple of errors which you can get when you actually create your first MVC page. Okay, for example, let's say for some reason if you move this my home.cshtml to the outer folder, for example, you can see here I am moving this my homepage.cshtml to the views folder here. You can see I have moved it outside the home folder, right? If I do this, then my project will not work. So if you see this error here, very quickly, if I again try to go and invoke my site here, so if I try to invoke this go to home, you can see now I'm getting this error over here. So this is a very common error which people normally get, and this error says the following. It says that your view should either be in the controller name folder. Controller name folder means, for example, at this moment my controller name is home, right? So either this page my homepage.aspx or chhtml should be inside the home folder, or either it should be inside a shared folder. So in case you have not put your views in the proper folder, then you would end up into this error. So either I should go and move this page into a home folder, or what I can do is I can go the other way around. I can also go and add a folder here called as a shared folder, right? So I can go and move this page from here to the shared folder as well. So this is also fine. So if I do this, and if I try to reload my application, I should be able to see my view. So this is one of the very common error which you will get, saying that your view is neither in the shared folder and neither in the controller name folder. So that is the first error which probably you will get, when you create your MVC application. And the second thing to remember here is, currently if you see, my action name is go to home and my view name is my home page. But let's say for some reason, if my view name was go to home, then I don't need to put the name here. In other words, for instance, let's say this my home page here. Let me go to my Solution Explorer, View, Solution Explorer. Let's say I rename this page as go to home. Okay, so I rename this page as go to home. In other words, this name is the same name as the action name. Okay, so whatever action name I have here, go to home, right? I have kept my page name the same. Very quickly, let me just drag and drop here. So you can see here now, I will zoom here. So you can see, let me put a zoom here. So you can see now my view name is go to home.chhtml and my action name is also go to home. Okay, so if this is a scenario where your action name and the view names are same, then you don't need to put this return view and the name inside it. In other words, you can straight away say like this, you can say a return view and that's it. So this will work. So in case your action name and the view name is same, then you don't need to put the view name there, right? So if I now execute this, again this will run. So if I say Control F5, so now if I go and run my action, I should see the same output. But at this moment here, you can see I have not given the view name. Why? Because my action name is same as my view name, right? So these are two important points. First thing, always put your view inside a shared folder or the controller name folder. And second, in case your action name and the view names are same, you don't need to put the view name. So this was the first Hello World MVC program. So when I started this video, I said that we are going to learn MVC in 16 hours, that is 2 days, right? So that's a promise, okay? So till now we have completed 20 minutes, and in this 20 minutes we have learned how to display a hello world, and then we also saw that what kind of errors you can get in MVC. We also talked a bit about the architecture of MVC. We saw that what kind of softwares you need in order to go and create an MVC application. So now you are just 15 hours and 40 minutes left out to become an MVC expert. So do not stop. I know how boring it is to hear my voice, but it is for your good. It is for your career. So keep moving, keep watching, and complete the remaining 15 hours and 40 minutes. If you have any problems, any issues, somewhere you are getting an error which is making you stop, send a mail at questpond@questpond.com. We'll definitely help you out. So 15 hours, 40 minutes still left out. Thank you so much.
So let us move ahead with the next lab of MVC, or I'll say lab number 2, routing. So what exactly is routing? If I put in one simple words, routing simplifies your MVC URL. Again, I will repeat. Routing simplifies your MVC URL. Now, what do I mean by URL simplification? Now, if you see developers, right, sometimes developers have a coding standard, naming standards, I'll say. For example, for class names, I have seen developers writing CLS home, right? CLS, they put the word CLS before the class. I have seen some of the developers, putting names of subroutines like sub, function, right? So if you have such kind of a naming convention, which is more technical, then it is very difficult for the end user to write something like this. If you see the current code, the end user has to say CLS home / sub go to home. Now that is definitely not user friendly, right? And specifically when the end users are non-technical persons, for them it is very difficult to write such kind of URLs. And that's where exactly routing helps us. Routing helps us to create user friendly URLs, and those URLs you can map with your technical controller names and action names. So for example, if you see currently, the way the URL is home / go to home. Now let's say you want to make your end user's life easy. You want to say that okay, he can just type the site name, whatever it is, localhost 1248 /home, and done. He does not have to type go to home, right? So in order to do that, what you can do is you can go to your Solution Explorer. So go to your Solution Explorer and go to the app_start folder. So you can see here there is an app_start folder, and in that we have a file called as routeconfig.cs file. Double click on it. Let me go and zoom this code here. You can see that we have something called as a routes collection here, and that's what is routing at the end of the day. Routing is nothing but it is a collection, which maps the user-friendly URLs with the controller names and method names. So for example, you can see here this map route method. First thing, if I move my mouse, you can see it's a route collection. Again, I'm going to halt for 1 or 2 seconds. You can see here routes is a collection. The name is route collection. Okay. So this routes is nothing but it's a type of route collection. It has a method called as map route. And this map route has 3 important things. First one is the key name. Every collection has a key name, right? Key 1, key 2. So you can see by default there is a default key what he has added, and he says that if the URL structure is like this, controller/action and the value, then go and invoke the home controller and go and invoke the action index inside it. So what I'll do is I'm going to go and add one more route here. So I'm going to say here control C. I'm going to take this thing. I'll say control V, and I will say this route is for the home. So I'll say home. And when anyone goes and types like this, so when anyone goes and says just home, please go and invoke the home controller and invoke this action, go to home, right? So I have created a simple home route here. I've named it as home. If somebody types this URL, if somebody says the site name /home, it will go and invoke the home/go to home. In the same way, let me go and again create some more user-friendly structures here. For example, let's say this is again one more version of home. So if somebody says home/home, he will still go to home/go to home. So you can see here now, I have created some user-friendly URLs. One is if he just types home, he will go to home. If he types home/home, then also he will go to home. Let me go and type one more user-friendly URL here. Let's say I will say something like this. I will say if he does not type anything, in other words, if he just goes to the site, then also he will go to home. So you can see now how I can define user-friendly URLs and map it to my controller name and action name. So if you see here now, we have 3 variations of the URL. One is home, one is home/home, and one is without anything. It just goes to the site and the home page opens, right? So if I do a control F5 now very quickly, you can see that it has ran the site, but it is saying me that this home one is already in use. Remember I said, right, this name is a key, and key in a collection has to be unique. So you can see here I have said here home 1, and again I have said home 1. So let's name this as home 2. Okay, let me build this, build solution. Let me go here and let me do a reload. So there it is. Now you can see, as I have said, for home 2, in home 2 I have said that if he does not put anything, he should show me the he should show me this page, right, the home page, and you can see it has shown, right? Now if I say here, okay, what if he just puts home? Yes, it will still show me the home page. What if he puts here home/home? Yes, then also it shows me the same home page. So routing is nothing but it is creating user-friendly URLs and mapping those user-friendly URLs to your controllers and actions. Now I would like to talk about 2 important points regarding routing. If you remember, when we opened the routeconfig.cs, this code was already present. What this code says, this code is nothing but it's an entry which is made inside the routes collection, where it says that by default you should invoke by the controller name and by the action name. So the first thing is, don't remove this code, because in case, let's say, if any of your structure does not map any kind of controller and action, it will try to invoke this key from here, and it will try to go and fetch the controller name and action name. So in case none of your URLs match, it will try to go and find from this last routes collection. Okay, so do not remove this code. That's the first thing. And second thing is, never make this code as the start code. If you do this, what will happen is, by default this route will always get invoked, and all the other routes will get bypassed. For example, if you see now, let me go and build the project. If you see for now, if I'm going to say here enter, you will see that he says I don't find anything. For example, you can see now I've entered, he says I don't know what is happening, right? If you say here home again, nothing is happening. So until you don't type the exact controller name and action name, you can see the page is not coming. Now you can see here I have typed the controller name and action name, and because that is the first thing in this collection here, he gets invoked and he shows the page. So in other words, what is happening is all the other routes keys here are getting bypassed. So remember that this code, this controller and action format should be your last key in the collection and not the first one. Now the routes.map route, the map route function actually goes and adds the route inside a collection. In the same way, there is one more function here which is very important called as ignore route. Sometimes we do not want people to go and access XML files, config files, AXD files, right? So we don't want people to say, okay, http localhost / web.config and download it, right? So what you can do is you can go and say here, okay, ignore this route, and you can see here there's one ignore route which is written. It says that any kind of resource, whatever is a resource name, if anybody types here .axd, do not allow him to invoke, do not allow him to go and invoke that resource, or do not allow him to send that request to that resource. So you can see here, I can go and add one more route here saying ignore route, anything with the name config. So in this way, in case if he ever goes, actually config files cannot be downloaded, so that is one part. But in case even if he tries saying, okay, http localhost / web.config, it will not work. So again, this method is very important in case you want to go and ignore some of the files or some of the routes, where you say that, okay, people cannot type this route, then you can use this as well. So map route to add a route, and ignore route to ignore any kind of routes, which you do not want the end users to invoke. Now, as a best practice, I have seen that a lot of people, what they do is, rather than writing this mapping inside the code here, they actually go and create a table, a table with must be simple 2 or 3 fields, which has the key name, which has the URL structure, and also it has which controller and action to map. And what they do is, they go and use ADO.NET or Entity Framework, and they go and loop through all the records of the table and add it into this collection, routes collection, by using the map route. So I've seen that a lot of people, where they have a lot of URLs and they want to map those URLs to controllers and actions, they go and create a simple table so that they can configure that table later on, rather than going and configuring inside the code here itself. And one of the questions which keeps coming now and then when I take a MVC class is that how we can set the start page in MVC. Means I'm sure that people who have worked with old web forms, you have a habit of right clicking on a page name, like let's say home.aspx or index.aspx. So you can right click and say set it as a start page. But remember that the first thing is, in MVC there is no start page. Why? Because the first hit never comes to the page, never comes to the view, right? So that's the first part. The second part is, if you want to go and set any kind of a start page, you have to actually set the start controller and the action. That's what you have to set, right? So in case you want to do that, what you can do is, you can see here, already I have answered it in this routing section. So here you can see I have created a URL with nothing, and I'm mapping it with home and go to home. So what happens is, by default, whatever view this go to home invokes becomes my default view. In other words, if you see here, when I do a control F5, that is without any URL structure here, just the site name, it goes and it invokes this home / go to home, and that invokes our view go to home.aspx. So if you see here, this has become the start page. So in case you want to set the start page, what you have to do is, you have to go and make your URL structure empty, and then map the appropriate controller name and action name, which will invoke the your home view or index view, whatever it is. Now, one very important point regarding routing. When I started this routing lab 2, right, I said that routing helps you to simplify URLs, and with that, end users will benefit. Actually, that's a very half truth, or I'll say it is not even a truth actually. Why? Because end users will not type like www.questpond.com/home or www.questpond.com/home/about us, right? End users will come to questpond.com, and from there they will click on hyperlinks and they will go wherever they want to go. So end users really don't type URLs on the site name, right? But by simplifying URLs, the biggest benefit you get is search engine optimization, that is SEO. For instance, let's say that you have a simple page which has computers inside it. Okay, you have written something about computers. So if your URL has the word computers inside it, then the search engine will try to give more ranking to it. Why? Because the URLs, the metadata, and also your page content is matching. So in the same way, let's say you have computers, and on that you want to also say, okay, /laptop, right? So you can again go and create one more URL structure saying, okay, /laptop will go to the same page, /computer will go to the same page. So basically, when the search engine looks at your URL and when it looks at your content, if they are matching, then the relevance becomes higher for your page. So the biggest benefit of routing is that basically it helps you to achieve greater search engine optimization. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. In this video, we were trying to understand routing. So great, so we have completed approximately 30 minutes of the tutorial, and you can see, like, in this 10 minutes, I've just explained you routing. So how easy MVC is, right? So we're going to move faster, we're going to move quicker, but stay with me. Don't lose hope. You have to keep continuing seeing this video and ensure that you complete your 16 hours of training. So we are done with 30 minutes till now, and pending is 15 hours and 30 minutes. Keep moving, keep rocking. Let's learn MVC in 2 days. That is 16 hours. Thank you so much.